You know, one of the greatest misunderstandings about kindness is that it means saying yes to everyone, never setting boundaries, and always putting others before yourself, no matter the cost. But that's not what God intended. Jesus was kind, but he wasn't a pushover. He loved people deeply, but he also walked away when necessary. The Bible tells us in Proverbs 4:23, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. That means not everyone deserves access to your kindness. Some people will take advantage of it, some will manipulate it, and some will use it against you. That's why wisdom is just as important as kindness. So today, I want to talk about why you need to stop being kind to everyone. Why setting limits isn't selfish, but spiritual. God didn't call you to be used and abused. He called you to walk in wisdom. Let's dive in. Kindness is a beautiful trait, but when it lacks boundaries, it becomes a heavy burden that drains your energy, peace, and joy. Many people believe that being kind means always saying yes, never disappointing others, and constantly putting others' needs before their own. But when kindness is given without limits, it leads to exhaustion, frustration, and even resentment. God never intended for you to be used, manipulated, or drained by people who take advantage of your generosity. Instead, he calls you to be wise, discerning, and intentional with your kindness. Jesus himself demonstrated this balance. He was full of compassion, healing the sick, feeding the hungry, and teaching those who sought truth. But he also withdrew from crowds, took time to rest, and didn't allow people to control him. There were moments when he walked away, refused to engage, or corrected those who tried to take advantage of his kindness. That wasn't selfishness, it was wisdom. If Jesus, the Son of God, knew when to set boundaries, then so should you. When you constantly give without limits, you eventually run on empty. You start to feel unappreciated because people expect more without gratitude. You feel guilty for wanting space even though you are emotionally drained. You might even begin to resent those who rely on you because deep down you know they don't reciprocate the same level of care. The truth is, kindness should flow from a place of strength, not exhaustion. When you give beyond your capacity, you're not truly helping others. You're enabling unhealthy patterns that keep both you and them stuck. Proverbs 4:23 says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. This means protecting your emotional and spiritual well-being is not selfish, it's necessary. If you allow people to constantly drain you, you won't have anything left to give to those who truly need and appreciate your kindness. Setting boundaries isn't about being unkind, it's about being wise. It's about ensuring that your kindness is directed toward the right people in the right way at the right time. Some people will never respect your kindness. They will see it as weakness and take advantage of it. They will manipulate your generosity, guilt trip you into doing more, and make you feel like you owe them something. But God never called you to be a doormat. He called you to walk in wisdom, love people with discernment, and protect the peace he has given you. Learning to say no, creating space for yourself, and choosing where your kindness goes is not unloving, it's necessary. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and God never intended for you to live a life of constant depletion. Be kind, but be wise. Love, but don't let people use you. Give, but not at the expense of your own well-being. When you set boundaries, you create space for healthy relationships, genuine connections, and the ability to serve others from a place of strength, not burnout. Not everyone deserves your kindness. This may sound harsh at first, but the reality is that some people will take advantage of your good nature without ever giving anything in return. God calls us to be loving and compassionate, but he also warns us to be discerning about who we allow into our lives. There are people who will drain your energy, manipulate your kindness, and take without gratitude. If you continue to give to these individuals without wisdom, you will find yourself feeling empty, frustrated, and even resentful. Jesus showed kindness to many, but he wasn't kind to everyone in the same way. He rebuked the Pharisees for their hypocrisy, refused to perform miracles for those who demanded them in unbelief, and even told his disciples to shake the dust off their feet when people rejected their message. He understood that not everyone deserved his time, energy, or kindness. He loved everyone, but he didn't allow himself to be used by those who had bad intent. That's an important lesson for us today. Some people in your life will only come around when they need something. They expect you to be available for them, but they are never available when you need help. They want your kindness, your generosity, and your emotional support, but they have no desire to invest in a real relationship with you. These are the people who drain your spirit and take advantage of your goodness. If you continue to be kind to them without discernment, they will keep using you. That's why God tells us to walk in wisdom. Proverbs 26:04 says, "Do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you yourself will be just like him." This verse reminds us that we shouldn't engage with those who refuse to change, who reject wisdom, or who continue to use and manipulate others. Your kindness should never be wasted on people who have no respect for it. True kindness is not about pleasing everyone. It's about doing what is right in God's eyes. Sometimes that means walking away from people who do not appreciate or respect your kindness. Setting limits on your kindness is not a sign of selfishness. It is a sign of strength. It means you are choosing to give to those who truly value your presence and appreciate your generosity. It means you are being intentional about where you invest your time and energy. The people who truly love and respect you will not take your kindness for granted. They will pour back into you just as you pour into them. God did not create you to be used and manipulated. He created you to walk in wisdom, to be kind with discernment, and to invest in relationships that bring mutual growth. When you stop being kind to everyone and start being wise about where you show kindness, you will find yourself surrounded by people who truly appreciate and respect you. Your kindness should be a blessing, not a burden. Be kind, but be wise. God calls you to be wise, not just nice. Many people mistake kindness for weakness, thinking that being a good person means always saying yes, never confronting wrongdoing, and allowing others to walk all over them. But true kindness is not about being passive, it's about being intentional. Wisdom and kindness must go hand in hand. Without wisdom, kindness can lead you into toxic relationships, unnecessary burdens, and emotional exhaustion. That's why God doesn't just call us to be kind, he calls us to be discerning. The Bible tells us in Matthew 10:16, "Be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves." This means that while we are called to be kind and loving, we are also expected to be wise in our interactions with others. Jesus himself was compassionate, but he was not naive. He knew people's hearts. He helped those who genuinely needed him, but he also exposed hypocrisy, rebuked those who tried to manipulate him, and walked away from those who had bad intentions. He didn't let his kindness be used as a tool for others to take advantage of him. If you are always trying to be nice without wisdom, you will find yourself being drained by people who don't appreciate you. There are individuals who only come into your life to take from you. They expect you to be available, to help, to listen, and to give, but they have no intention of returning that kindness. If you allow this pattern to continue, you will become exhausted, resentful, and spiritually depleted. That's not what God wants for you. He wants you to walk in wisdom, to protect your heart, and to be intentional about where you invest your time and energy. Proverbs 19:20 says, "Listen to advice and accept discipline, and at the end you will be counted among the wise." Wisdom is a gift from God, and it helps you discern who is worth your time and who is simply using you. It helps you recognize when to give and when to step back. There is nothing wrong with setting boundaries and saying no. In fact, saying no can be one of the wisest things you do. You are not called to be a people pleaser. You are called to live according to God's purpose. When you prioritize wisdom over being nice, you begin to protect your peace. You start to recognize the difference between helping someone who genuinely needs support and enabling someone who refuses to take responsibility for their own life. You stop feeling guilty for setting boundaries because you understand that God does not want you to be used or manipulated. Kindness without wisdom is dangerous. It leads to burnout, frustration, and unhealthy relationships. But when you combine kindness with wisdom, you become stronger, more discerning, and more aligned with God's purpose for your life. So don't just be nice, be wise. Walk in discernment, set healthy boundaries, and allow your kindness to be a reflection of God's wisdom, not just a reaction to people's demands. Jesus walked away from certain people. Many people think that being kind means always staying, always helping, and never setting limits. But Jesus himself showed us that walking away is sometimes the best thing you can do. He didn't chase after everyone. He didn't try to convince people to change. He didn't force his kindness on those who rejected it. Instead, he knew when to step away, when to stay silent, and when to move on. One powerful example of this is in Matthew 13:58, where it says, "And he did not do many miracles there because of their lack of faith." Jesus was in his own hometown, but the people didn't believe in him. Instead of arguing, trying to prove himself, or continuing to pour out his power where it wasn't welcomed, he simply moved on. He didn't waste time trying to be kind to those who rejected him. He understood that his kindness, his wisdom, and his power were meant for those who truly valued them. There are people in your life who will never appreciate your kindness. No matter how much you give, they will always want more. No matter how patient you are, they will continue to disrespect you. No matter how much you try to help, they will refuse to change. Jesus didn't stay in places where he wasn't valued, and neither should you. Some people are not meant to receive your kindness because they will only misuse it. In John 6, after Jesus performed miracles and fed the multitudes, many people followed him, not because they believed in him, but because they wanted more food. When he began to teach deeper truths, they turned away. What did Jesus do? He let them go. He didn't chase after them or beg them to stay. He focused on those who were truly ready to receive his message. There is wisdom in knowing when to walk away. It doesn't mean you are bitter, unkind, or unforgiving. It means you understand that your time, your kindness, and your energy are valuable. If someone is mistreating you, manipulating you, or constantly taking without giving, it's okay to step back. Jesus never allowed himself to be controlled by people's demands or emotions. He set clear boundaries, and he wants you to do the same. Some relationships are not meant to continue. Some people will never change. Some situations will only drain you if you keep trying to fix them. Walking away doesn't mean you don't love them. It means you love yourself enough to protect your peace. It means you trust that God has something better for you. You don't have to stay in toxic situations just to prove that you are kind. Jesus didn't. He knew when to walk away, and he knew when to stay. Follow his example. Love people. Pray for them and wish them well. But don't be afraid to step away when your kindness is being wasted. You deserve to be in places where you are valued, just as Jesus did. Saying no is a form of wisdom. Many people struggle with saying no because they fear disappointing others, being seen as unkind, or feeling guilty. But the truth is, constantly saying yes to everyone will drain you, distract you, and pull you away from what truly matters. God did not call you to be everything to everyone. He called you to walk in wisdom, and wisdom means knowing when to say yes and when to say no. Jesus himself said no many times. He didn't heal everyone in every town. He didn't meet every single demand placed on him. He didn't stay where he wasn't welcomed. In Luke 5:15-16, the crowds were constantly coming to Jesus for healing. But instead of saying yes to everyone, the Bible says, but Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. He knew that if he didn't take time to rest and connect with God, he would have nothing left to give. If Jesus needed to set boundaries, so do you. There are people in your life who will always want more from you. They will expect you to be available at all times to fix their problems and to meet their needs without considering how it affects you. If you don't learn to say no, they will drain your energy and leave you exhausted. Saying no is not selfish, it is necessary. When you say no to the wrong things, you create space to say yes to the right things. Proverbs 29:25 says, "Fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe." Many people say yes because they fear what others will think. They don't want to be judged, criticized, or rejected. But when you live to please people instead of God, you become trapped in their expectations. You end up doing things out of obligation rather than purpose. Saying no frees you from that trap and allows you to focus on what God has actually called you to do. Some people will try to make you feel guilty for saying no. They will act hurt, disappointed, or even angry. But remember, their reaction is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to be obedient to God's will, not to meet everyone's demands. If saying yes to them means saying no to your peace, your priorities, or your well-being, then it's time to set a boundary. Saying no doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care enough about yourself to protect your energy, your time, and your purpose. It means you trust that God's plan for your life is greater than people's expectations. It means you understand that true kindness is not about being available to everyone. It's about being available for what truly matters. So don't be afraid to say no. Jesus did, wise people do, and when you do, you'll find more peace, more clarity, and more strength to walk in the purpose God has for you. Not everyone deserves access to you. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is giving your time, energy, and kindness to people who do not value them. God created you with a purpose, and He wants you to be intentional about who you allow into your life. If you give everyone unlimited access, you will find yourself drained, frustrated, and distracted from what truly matters. Just because you have a kind heart does not mean you have to be available to everyone. Jesus set clear boundaries in His relationships. He loved everyone, but He didn't give everyone the same level of access to Him. He had 12 disciples, but even among them, He had an inner circle. Peter, James, and John, who were with Him during His most intimate moments. He ministered to the crowds, but He didn't allow their expectations to control Him. He knew when to withdraw, when to say no, and when to walk away. He understood that his time and energy were limited, so he invested them wisely. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." If you allow toxic people, manipulators, and users into your life without limits, they will corrupt your peace and distract you from God's plan. Some people only come into your life to take from you. They don't appreciate your kindness. They expect it. They don't respect your time. They demand it. They don't support your growth. They drain your energy. These are the people you need to distance yourself from. Jesus didn't waste time on people who had no desire to change. In Matthew 7:6, He said, "Do not give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces." Your time, energy, and kindness are valuable. If someone is constantly disrespecting, using, or manipulating you, it's time to set a boundary. Not everyone deserves access to your life. Some people will call you selfish for protecting your peace, but remember, your first responsibility is to God's purpose, not to people's expectations. Jesus wasn't controlled by guilt, and neither should you be. He didn't let others dictate his actions, and neither should you. You are not obligated to give your time to people who drain you. You are not required to be kind to those who mistreat you. You have the right to choose who gets access to you. Being kind does not mean being available to everyone. It means being wise about who you invest in. It means recognizing when someone is a blessing and when they are a burden. It means understanding that your peace, your time, and your energy are gifts from God, and you must protect them. When you stop giving access to the wrong people, you create space for the right people, those who uplift, respect, and truly appreciate you. True kindness is not about pleasing everyone. It's about walking in wisdom. God calls you to be loving, but he also calls you to be discerning. When you continue to give your time, energy, and kindness to those who misuse it, you are not honoring God's purpose for your life. You are allowing yourself to be drained, distracted, and pulled away from what truly matters. Jesus was kind, but he was never weak. He knew when to help, when to step back, and when to walk away. He set boundaries, said no when necessary, and protected his peace. He understood that not everyone deserved access to him, and he was never controlled by guilt or the expectations of others. If Jesus did this, so should you. You don't have to justify protecting your peace. You don't have to feel guilty for saying no. You don't have to let people use you just because you have a kind heart. God wants you to be wise with your kindness, to give it where it is valued, to set boundaries where it is misused, and to walk away when necessary. So stop being kind to everyone at your own expense. Be kind, but be wise. Be loving, but be discerning. Protect your time, your energy, and your peace, because you are called to live in alignment with God's will, not to be weighed down by people who refuse to respect you. Walk in wisdom and let your kindness be a reflection of God's strength, not people's expectations.